Hi Year 4 and welcome to Thursday's math lesson on decimals. Before we go into today's learning, can you have a go at the starter for me? It's based on what we did yesterday. What I'd like you to do is take the digits in the tenths and the hundredths place for each of these numbers for me, please. Shouldn't take too long. As I said, it's just based on what we did yesterday. So pause the video, have a go, and then we'll go through it together. Okay, let's go through the answers then. So tenths I will do in red. So 6.51. 5 is in the tenths place, 9.37, 3 is in the tenths place, and 2.63, 6 is in the tenths place. And then hundredths, 1 is in the hundredths place for this one, and then 7, and then 3. So that's just based on what we did yesterday, thinking about your place value grid, what part of the grid they'd be in tenths, that would be in hundredths. So hopefully that was all quite straightforward for you. So today we're going to look at dividing a one-digit number by 10. Now we've done this before, so it shouldn't be too much new information, if that makes sense, but it will be looking more at the decimal, so dividing a number so that it goes into decimal points. So we have our star words, they're pretty much the same as they were before, we just have divide now as well. So looking at this place value grid then, let's learn together. So if we have 4 ones, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, how many tenths would that be equal to? So if we have 4 ones and we exchange them for tenths, how many tenths would there be? Think about how many tenths make up one whole. So then how many tenths would make up 4 one wholes? So it'd actually be 40. So I'm going to try and get 40 of these in there. I'll pause the video and then I'll come back to you to show you the next step. Okay, so I've got my 40 tenths because there are 10 tenths in 1 So if we remember from last time in the other lesson, 1 whole is the same as 10 times 0.1, isn't it? 10 lots of tenths are in 1 whole. So if we have 40 tenths, which is the same as this, so I'll put an equals there so we know it's equal. So 4 ones is the same or equivalent as 40 tenths. Now, if we know these are the same, rather than doing 4 divided by 10, we could do 40, rather than 4 ones, got to write ones there, we could do 40 tenths divided by 10. Yeah, because they are the same, okay? We're just exchanging them. So if we have 40 tenths divided by 10, now just take away the tenths for the minute and do 40 divided by 10, which is 4. So therefore 40 tenths divided by 10 is 4 tenths, which means that 4 divided by 10 is 0.4, which is 4 tenths. Okay, there's a lot of steps there, but it is all quite explanatory because it's just saying that 4 ones is the same as 40 tenths. We know that because you can see that this is the same as this over here. So then we're just, instead of doing 4 ones divided by 10, we're just using 40 tenths instead. So 40 tenths divided by 10 is 4 tenths. Therefore, 4 divided by 10 is 0.4, which is just 4 tenths, just written as a decimal. Okay, now it's your turn to have a go. So I want you to work out what 6 ones is as tenths, and then use that to divide by 10 to work out how many tenths that would be, and then work out what 6 divided by 10 would be. Okay, once you get to see the pattern, it should be easier, but I actually want you to understand why the pattern is that way before we go into that. So have a go, pause the video, and if not, then we'll, if you're still in a pickle, then we'll go through it together now. So 6 ones is the same as 60 tenths. So I'm not going to do 60 because that will take me forever. Let me just pause the video and work this out. Okay, there we go. Now, because I was silly, I guess, and didn't pick a lower number, I decided not to do 60 tenths because it would take me ages. They wouldn't have fitted on. So instead I've just done 6 1/10, and then I've just written times by 10. So we know that each one is actually worth 10 tenths. So yeah, it would have just taken too much room up. So we know that 6 ones is the same as 60 tenths. Now that's just using our knowledge from the previous lesson, so there's no new knowledge there. 6 ones we know is the same as 60 tenths because 1 1 is 10 tenths, so therefore 6 ones is 60 tenths. So if we have 60 tenths divided by 10, just ignore the tenths part for the minute and do 60 divided by 10, which is 6. So therefore 60 tenths divided by 10 equals 6 tenths, and therefore 6 divided by 10 is 6 tenths, which as a decimal is 0.6. So that is 6 tenths, okay? It's just written as a decimal instead. So the important thing to remember here is just basically that in 1 1 there are 10 tenths. So if there's 6 ones, there's 60 tenths, and that's the important thing to remember in this. But hopefully you spotted that if we have 6 divided by 10, it becomes 0.6. So therefore the number at the front stays the same. It's just moved to the right of the place value grid, really. And we're going to look at that now, actually. So we can also just move the digits in the ones to the tenth. So if you have 6 divided by 10, we could actually just move these across. I don't know if it's going to let me. Let's give it a go. Yes, however, these are ones now. I don't want ones. Hang on, let me just pause the video. So actually, you can just move your ones into your tenths as tenths, and then that would be your answer. So you can just move them along in the place value grid. Okay, that's kind of just a shortcut way, but you can only kind of do that once you understand this process, because we get the same answer. If we move 6 ones into the tenths, we have 6 tenths, which is 0.6, which is our answer that we got in the previous question when we did it this longer method. But this is just a short way of working out. So basically you can just move digits across the tenths and that will be your answer. Let's look at this one then. So we have 2 divided by 10. So using the method of just moving them across the tenths, what would our new answer be? So what you would do is take 2 tenths. So you would literally just move your ones to the tenths and make them tenths, and then that's your answer. Okay, you just move them across one space to the right. Okay, not this point, this is the decimal point, but you move it over to the tenths. So your new answer is 0.2, because that is the same as 0.2. So therefore 2 divided by 10 is 0.2. Okay, hopefully that's quite straightforward. It's a confusing concept, but once you get your head around it, it should be quite straightforward. And if you notice the pattern, for example, 2 divided by 2 is 0.2, 3 divided by 10 is 0.3, 4 divided by 10, see if you can guess it, 0.4, and then 5 divided by 10 will be 0.5, and so on. So there is a pattern as well. So if you are still in a pickle, then just think of it like that. See the pattern. You do 3 divided by 10, you just move the 3 into the tenths column, and that's essentially what you're doing. Okay, I've kind of spoken about how and why that happens, but essentially that is the way to do it. Moving on into our developed learning, I'm just going to look at a bar model to represent this as well. So how could we complete the bar model? So if we have 8 as our whole number, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 parts that it's been split into. We would have 0.8 in each one. Now it wouldn't be 0.1 because then that would just be for one whole. But if you have 0.8 in each one, because if you added up all of them, it would make 8 wholes. So then could we record the calculation it represents? So it's representing that 8 divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is 0.8. So it's the same process as if, for example, if this was 80, you would have just put 8 in all of these, because you would have done 80 divided by 10 to make 8. It's the same thing, it's just looking at decimals now, so going into the tenths column rather than the ones and the ones and the tens, sorry. So yeah, it's just a different way of showing it. It's Sorry, I get lots of emails at the moment. They're very distracting. So now it's your turn to have a go at the bar model. So can you complete this bar model, and can you record the calculation it represents? So using the same method I used here, can you have a go now? And if you're really not sure, we'll go through it together. So we have 4 as our whole number, and it's been divided up into 10 parts. So therefore we know, so imagine it was 40. If it was 40, what would all these be split into? If you did 40 divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you know that each one would be worth 4. However, we're looking at 4. So therefore each box is going to have 0.4 in. Okay, so each of these boxes would be 0.4. And as a calculation, it would be 4 divided by 10, because there's 4 as a whole divided into 10 equal parts, equals 0.4. Okay, so it's just a different way of showing what we've already done in the lesson, just so we really understand why and how that is the pattern and why it happens like that. It is time for you to do your questions now. So there's 2 groups. This is group 1's questions, and they're also on the website if you want to print them off. This is group 2. And then group 2 again. And then finally the challenge. So once you've had a good go at those, come back and we will go through the answers together. Okay, time to go through the answers then. So for group 1, the first question says, Eva uses counters to make a 1-digit number. It says to divide the numbers by 10, we move the counters 1 column to the right, which is what we already talked about. What is the value of the counters now? So if you move them to the right, it would be 0.2, because you would move the 2 counters into the tenths, and then that would be 0.2 because they become tenths rather than 1, so that would be 0.2. Use this method to solve these. So 3 divided by 10 is 0.3, 7 divided by 10 is 0.7, and 4 divided by 10 is 0.4. Don't be fooled just because it's the other way around, it's the same thing. And then the next one says, here is a 1-digit number on a place value chart. When divided by 10, we move the digits 1 place to the right. Okay, so you move it to the right, you move it in that direction. So 5 divided by 10 is therefore 0.5. Use this method to solve 8 divided by 10, which is 0.8. 9 divided by 10, which is 0.9. And then this one you had to do the opposite. So you had to work out what you divide by 10 to get 0.2, and that is 2. Okay, so hopefully that was all okay for you. Group 2, complete the following bar model and record the calculation that it represents. So it's 5 divided into 10 equal parts, which would be 0.5. So 5 is your whole number, you're dividing it into 10 equal parts, and you know that that's 0.5. The next one says, Max says, 1 divided by 10 is equal to 10 tenths. Explain Max's mistake and give the correct answer. So if you do 1 divided by 10, so if we just do that first, we know that that's 0.1. So Max is saying that 0.1 is equal to 10 tenths, which would be 1 whole. Because if we have 10 tenths, that's 1 whole, and therefore that is not equal. So he's incorrect. So he hasn't actually divided the 10 tenths by 10 tenths by 10 either. You can see here that there's 1 whole, and here that there's 10 tenths, which these represent the same thing, but he's not actually divided the 10 tenths by 10. That's a very complicated thing to say, but essentially, yes, he's just not divided these by 10 as well. And if he did, then he'd get 0.1, which is what 1 divided by 10 is. Okay, so the correct answer will be 0.1. The next part for group 2, 6 divided by 10 is 0.6, 8 divided by 10 is 0.8, 1 divided by 10, 0.1, 0 divided by 10 is 0, Hope that didn't catch you out. Think about if you have, well, 0 divided by anything is 0, because if you have nothing to share out, then there's going to be nothing in your bubbles or whatever you're sharing out between, so it's always 0. This one would be 4. 4 divided by 10 is 0.4. This one is 5. 5 divided by 10 is 0.5. 3 divided by 10 is 0.3. Remember, don't be fooled by the fact that they're the other way around. It's the same thing. And then this one is 10. This one was meant to throw you off a bit as well. If you have 10 and you divide that by 10, that's 1. So that one's a bit of a tricky one. Don't worry too much if you've got a pickle with that one. And then finally, the challenge: complete the number sentences. So 4 divided by 10 we know is 0.4. So we had to think of a number which would go in here, which would still get the same answer. So we need 8 divided by something, then divide by 10. So this would be 2, because if you do 8 divided by 2, that's 4. And then 4 divided by 10 is 0.4. This one, 15 divided by 3 divided by 10. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. Divided by 10 is 0.5. So therefore 5 divided by 10 is the same. And then lastly, we'll start with this side because that's where we got all the answers. Sorry about that, I just had something caught in my throat. This one, 32 divided by 4 is 8. Divided by 10 is 0.8. So therefore we had to do 64 divided by 8, because that's 8. And then divide that by 10, which is 0.8 as well. So that one you had to know your 8 times table to do, so it might have been a bit tricky, but hopefully it was okay for you. That's everything for today. Thank you for watching. Hopefully it was all okay. It is a bit confusing, but once you spot that pattern, that actually you're just moving your digits into the right column of a place value grid, then it is quite self-explanatory, but it is a tricky concept to get your head around. So we're doing some more of this tomorrow. Don't worry if it was a bit too tricky for you. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you all again soon.